last but not least, in the ongoing other saga about, oh, won't somebody please think of the children when it comes to violence in video games, comes a poll by 56% of America that shows that 56% of America are stupid. But what I like about this even more is that it illustrates how much these people either don't care what their kids are actually playing or don't care that the ESRB actually exists. Points I made from the very beginning of the talk about this entirely ludicrous topic. Plus, I'm going to raise the stakes by adding in an FBI profiler who says that the FBI does not consider violent video games to be any sort of a cause for violent behavior in 9 out of 10 cases. Meaning that if you're normally adjusted, violent video games are not going to cause you to become a violent, homicidal maniac. Something I've been saying since the very beginning of this debacle, since the end of Sandy Hook, and the beginning of the blame and shame game. Poll: playing video games correlates with violent behavior. The debate rages on. In the wake of recent string of violent acts across America, many are still looking for something or someone to blame. A majority of Americans, 58%, believe playing video games contributes to increased levels of violent behavior in teens. Again, according to the study by Harris Interactive, of the 2,278 participating adults, 38% were oblivious to the existence of the ESRB. Lovely. While an additional 33% indicated that they let their children play whatever they want. Yeah. Can you see the conflict of interest here? Can you see the problem I have with this poll and its findings? The findings underscore the lack of awareness Americans have about the video game rating system. I know that because I used to sell video games and I had to clue parents in constantly about the ESRB to give them a chance that if they are offended by violence, they know what their kids are playing. Sometimes I'd get scorned looks from the kids, but you know what? If you're going to fight for it, you might as well use it, parent groups. Because otherwise, this has been unduly crucifying the games market way back during the Mortal Kombat era and forcing a system upon them that has had no discernible effect on the game buying habits of the public, because the public does not care half as much about your morality and your abhorrent reaction to video game violence as you do, and don't often share the idea, although except for in this poll here, that video games actually contribute to physical acts of violence, as well as confusion in the market. Harris President Mike DeVera said in a statement, "They also factor in larger discussion playing out across our country and on the political stage around how violent games impact our youth, with President Obama recently announcing a desire to look into the ways to fund research examining the impact of violent video games on children. Something that I've spoken out against because it's money that we could spend better, and there's far more research out there, longitudinal, decades worth of research showing no scientific link to violent kids and violent behavior. And if anything's going to make me violent-ish, it's the continued ignorance to scientific data. It's the fact that people are that emotional, and yet, as this article will talk about, they don't seem to give two craps about violent TV, violent movies, or violent music. Not that I'm saying that any of these things, as well as violent books, contribute to violent children, but We've been down this road. We were down this road with comic books. We're down this road with music and the music industry. We've even been partially down this road with video games. This is a question that has been answered to the nth degree, and people, including our president, want to waste money trying to answer a question that has already been answered. I don't agree with this. This is crucifixion of something, of an art medium that need not be crucified, especially when you factor in the fact that youth violence has plummeted since the advent of things like the game Doom, and has not seen any recent spikes of any notable type whatsoever. So why are we still fighting? Why? Because you hate science, because it doesn't agree with you, because you are morally abhorrent to this media, which you think means that morality equals scientifically valid, which it doesn't? Or no, you keep seeing the shooting games and assume that the video gaming industry is nothing but first-person shooters with accurate training, and tells you how to buy, purchase, and maintain weapons, as well as how to drive getaway cars, how to fly Harrier jets, and so on and so forth. If that were even slightly true, I should have licenses and degrees in everything by now. But I don't. I had to learn to drive despite my years of Grand Theft Auto. I haven't fired an actual gun before, and with the ways that both sides are being stupid about gun control, I frankly have lost my appetite or interest in ever owning or firing a real gun. Thanks, guys. But now there's this, and they assume, oh, because they're acting this out, this must be some deep-seated issue. Never mind the parenting. Never mind the fact that this illustrates everything I've been talking about. How parents have to be culpable. Oh, I didn't know the ESRB existed. I didn't know I was buying murder simulators for my son, who then went on to murder the neighbor's cat. Oh, but you're not responsible for what you did for your son. Oh, I let my son play whatever he wants, but I'm opposed to violence in media, and I'm a hypocrite, and I shouldn't be allowed to procreate. Yeah, I said it, and what? I'm tired. I am sick and tired of everything being to blame, but either the shooter or the people who facilitated media to a shooter who is clearly unbalanced and is one of those exceptions to the rule that it's the type of person who should not be imbibing violent media of any kind. But no, it's not the shooter's fault. It's not the kid. It's not the parents' fault. It's guns. It's the media. It's video games. It's this. It's that. It's everything but what it is. And you want to continue to disrespect things like Sandy Hook by taking the responsibility away from the shooter and putting it on everything else that had nothing to do with it. I'm tired of you. I'm tired of the fact that you're not willing to use the ESRB ratings. You're not willing to take 5 seconds to read the descriptors. And as this article down below talks about, you feel that these descriptors are still not enough. Rated E, 10+, cartoon violence, crude humor, violence and animation. Oh, okay. And it's in 2 languages. 2 languages. I know virtually everything I need to know about this from the description here as far as why this was rated for what it was rated for. But no, that's not enough for you folks. But here we then have the counterbalance. Former FBI profiler says games do not cause violence. Mary Ellen O'Toole says video games are just one risk variable for those who may act out violently. Parents Television Council president calls for better game ratings. It is my experience that video games do not cause violence. However, it is one risk variable when we do when we do a threat assessment for the risk of acting out violently. But again, she's trying to talk about people who have some sort of unbalance, some people who in certain situations, but not across the board, because again, I'm not going to give you the satisfaction of painting this topic with a broad brush. Certain people with certain conditions and under certain conditions and with certain types of upbringings and certain types of genes, as I've talked about over and over again, are going to be your determining factor whether this person is ever going to have any sort of influence or any sort of feeling of, I want to stop doing this in games and I want to do this in real life. And they're the very, very low minority. Links to everything is down in the underbar, although if you want further talks about genes and home life, check out my playlist down in the underbar with links aplenty about the effects of genes, specifically the MAOA gene, as well as environment and how those two can interact to determine whether somebody's going to become a mass murderer or somebody who might actually be helpful to people but still have the genes of a mass murderer. It's time to put away the generalizations, people. It's time to be adults, to put on our big boy pants and our big girl pants and be the adults that we claim to be. Adults do not make assumptions like this. Adults do not ignore warning signs on products that are clearly marked. Adults do not simply say that this is bad, but I let my child do whatever. That's not parenting. That's not being an adult. That is the kind of thing that then gets trickled down and is the reason why single parents like me are crapped on in this society, because we're looked down upon, when meanwhile two-parent households are ignoring their kids, shoving copious amounts of media under their noses and into their homes, and then acting surprised when the child, who's been emotionally, maybe even otherwise neglected, acts out. I'm tired of constantly bringing up the same talking points and having none refuted. Nobody has taken my challenge to present 10 studies that show video game violence translates into physical violence. Because there are none, but I'm willing to look at what other crackpot research people have done to try to support their biased opinion against the media following these recent tragedies. But as for me, I say it's time to put the responsibility on the people who commit the acts instead of acting as if everything else that has nothing to do with it had everything to do with it. It's time to grow up, and it's time to be the adults we all claim that we are, and make laws that go after the actual culprits behind all this, and not after the fear-mongering culprits that we think have anything to do with anything.